I want to talk a little about you so people know where you come from in your approach to this. Why this field? Why did you focus on this in particular? Why are you focusing on this right now?
Well, why did I get into this in the first instance? The truth is, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was working in politics in the UK, in Parliament, working for a member of Parliament, and we saw two things happening simultaneously. We saw a sudden growth in anti-Semitic, so anti-Jewish hatred on the left in the UK. And we saw simultaneously, if people may remember, there was a referendum on the European Union and Brexit in the UK.
Right.
And my colleague, my friend, Jo Cox, who was a member of Parliament, she was a mom of two beautiful kids. And she was shot, stabbed, and beaten to death by a guy who'd been radicalized online with conspiracy theories and lies. And it really opened my eyes that, we'd been in 2016, we were just getting on with our lives. We thought that that social media was just something online. But what we'd missed was that it was becoming the main place where we shared information, where we negotiated our values as a society, even negotiated what we called facts. And that a lot of, while social media is great because it connects us all, it also connects really bad people to us all. It connects people who are willing to spread lies, hate, disinformation knowingly. And it made us start thinking, well, what else is it changing beyond creating extremism? Is it changing our ability to respond to pandemics? Is it changing our ability to respond to extremism? And is it changing our ability to parent effectively?
When you talk about this guy that attacked Jo Cox and took her life so tragically, he was radicalized online. Let's think back before the proliferation of the internet. Somebody could be living out in some rural community in the UK or the US, and they may have these wild theories. They may have these conspiracy theories, but they're pretty isolated.
Yeah.
But now, being on the internet, those theories get oxygen, and other people that might have even a thread of that, they start interacting and they start feeding off each other, and they grow exponentially.
What we found was exactly that, but there was a disturbing additional fact that we realized that disinformation, that hate, actually gets an advantage on those platforms because there is no level playing field. In fact, the platforms, we realized, in the way that they present information, they don't give you a timeline. What they give you is a artificially sorted list of content based on how likely it is that you will engage with it. So they are looking for something, the key thing that they look for is engagement. Are people writing back? Are they quoting it? And they found that hatred gets people who, not just people who agree, but people who vehemently disagree, engage with it. So what was happening over time was lots and lots of hate was getting engagement. Tolerant content, normal people who just want to, get on by in life, they want to just live their lives. Their voices were being quietly silenced. And in fact, what it was doing was amplifying that hatred into billions of news feeds, normalizing those ideas, making it look as though our world is more brittle, more hateful, more full of lies than it was before. And that, over time, has had a really devastating impact on our societies.
Yeah. And let's talk about how that's happening, because I think people hear this and they don't realize what's actually happening. I've talked to some people that have broken this down for me. You say those that have some peaceful ideologies, some things that are harmonious, and that doesn't get the heat, the distribution that hatred does. What that means is this algorithm doesn't pick those messages of harmony and tranquility up and push them out to as many people as do the hate messages, because those hate messages are clickbait.
Yeah.
And people click on those, and so they spread, they get more clicks, which means there's more advertising dollars, and people are outraged by that. And it's like, oh my God, can you believe this? and they click on it, and then they send it to someone else, and they get outraged, and they click on it. And so that spreads while this message here of, hey, have a nice day, doesn't get any heat. There's no emotional charge to it, so it just sits there.
It's exactly that. And what that does over time and, at scale is it makes us look at, so that if the lens through which we look at other people's opinions and at society as a whole are these platforms, for better or for worse, these platforms have 4.5 billion users around the world. They are incredibly influential on our lives. TikTok, for example, is one platform that 2/3 of American teens use TikTok, two in three, and they use it on average for 80 minutes a day. That is an unprecedented shift in where we get our information from. And these platforms make the world seem more terrifying, more brittle, more hostile. They make the rest of society seem sort of like it's full of enemies. And that will have an effect on our politics. It'll have an effect on our democracy. Over time, it might make it impossible to sustain democracy because democracy relies on the basic knowledge that we are all in it together. And it's really hard to believe that we're all in it together when social media presents us with fear and hatred constantly.
Now, I'll tell you something that I learned in the trial work that I did for years in trial sciences. People can say, well, they may see that, but then in the rest of their lives, they realize that's not the case. But something I learned, I would see lawyers that would have some really powerful piece of evidence they were trying to get into the trial, and the judge would not allow it in. And at the end of the day or on a break, the lawyers would look at me and say, we didn't get that in, but the jury knows we had something really powerful. That landed on them, that registered on them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Jurors decide cases based on what they see and hear, not what they don't see and hear. If you didn't get it in, they won't use that in deciding this case 3 weeks from now. They only use what they see and hear. And what these 2 out of 3 kids are seeing and hearing are not the messages of we're all in this together, let's be reasonable, let's be peaceful and supportive. What they're seeing is hate and conspiracy and all of these things. That's what writes on the slate of who they are.
Sure. And look, it's about having, I think it's really important for us to hear lots of opinions. It's really, and obviously it's vital that everyone has the ability to speak. But the question isn't about freedom of speech. This is about freedom of reach. And who's getting the most reach are the most angry, the most hateful, disinformation, lies and hatred have been given the advantage in our society. And that's like having a diet that's just full of, one food group. It's not a balanced diet, and it will eventually lead to pathologies. It will make you ill. And that information diet of just fear and hate is making our society ill. And it's not just me saying it. Look around you. Look at what's happening in our societies. These kind of weird, try and remember the last Christmas dinner you had and what it's like sitting there with these really entrenched, angry opinions on 2 sides. It's damaging our ability to form the consensus, the harmony that's a prerequisite for peaceful, prosperous, loving societies. And it's also having an effect, as we know, on our children, on our individual psychology, because kids are the most vulnerable among us. They are forming their minds, they're forming their neurology, even the pathways in their brain. And when you expose them to that kind of environment, well, that's why we carry out studies like we have recently, because the truth is what it's doing is literally killing some of them.